Hi class, in this video I'm going to be working through how I'm going to make a solid model of this uh, bar connector here. So this is for our sample final problem number 9. And this one is quite different than problem 8, which we just previously went through, in that the operations are going to be different. Where up here we were using extrudes primarily. What we could be using here, there's actually several tools. You could be using lofts or sweeps. Sweep would be preferable to loft because the cross sections are constant. But what I'm going to be using is revolves, because I think if you are to use revolves, that should minimize the number of sketches we need. And so what I'm going to try to do is get this done in 2 sketches. So the first sketch I'm going to use is looking at this right face here, and I can see it in this sketch here. That's the primary sketch that I'm going to do. So essentially what I could sketch is all the geometry that I'm seeing normal to this plane. Now this one that's extending out at an odd angle, I'm not going to be able to get that sketch done in this plane, but these 3 sections of pipe I could get done in this one. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to go ahead and sketch it on my front plane. Of course, the first thing I'm going to do is update my document settings to be millimeters. It was already in millimeters. And so I'll go ahead and sketch on my front plane. So go ahead and create a sketch there. I'm going to open that folder so I can watch this sketch as I go to make sure it stays constrained. And actually a tool that I could use to get this done quite fast is the rectangle tool. So we recall that all the sketching tools live up in our sketching toolbar, but the rectangle tool, the hotkey for the 2-point rectangles is R. If I need other rectangles, I can go ahead and navigate or even add shortcuts, but I'll use R. And we know that what we'd like to do is place our origin right here, right in this point here is where we're going to create the origin. So I'm going to go ahead and create a rectangle here. This is 20 tab, and then so my axis is going to be right on there, which means it's going to be half the diameter of that. So this will be 5 for that rectangle. And what I could do, I don't typically like doing the mirror feature in the tool environment or in the sketch environment. And actually, I don't need that line. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and mirror it because it looks exactly the same up top and on the bottom. Then I'm going to use my rectangle tool again. So basically, these 2 features could be revolved to get me this vertical section of 2. And then the horizontal one, I'll just repeat with my rectangle tool. That's going to be 20. And the other one, this is 20. And this one was 5. Okay, and so I've got these ones that are at a right angle pretty easily. Now I'm not going to use the rectangle tool for this one right here that's coming in at a 45-degree angle. It still has a dimension of 20, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the line tool. So that's going to make this a little bit easier than the rectangle. So line tool, and I don't have to get it perfect in drawing this rectangle. I can add in my constraints after the fact. I already did get the auto constraint, and I like these that they're 2 perpendicular. I'm going to just go ahead and add this one to be perpendicular to that and to perpendicular to there. So the only thing left to do is now dimension it. That's 20. This is 5. Oops. Better delete that now. So I'd like to get this normal to that face, so 5. And then our angle right here is going to be that 45 degrees. Okay, now I see that the sketch is fully constrained. And what we see is a bunch of blind holes. And so it seems like they did not design this for manufacturability. There should be tapers on these. I'm going to go ahead and use the hole tool after the fact. But if you wanted to, you could actually just embed rectangles in here and not revolve those. And so I'll do one of those and that would be perfectly acceptable solution. So and actually I'll just use the line tool because I don't need to add extra lines here. And I don't want to snap to that midpoint, so this is not what I'd like. I'm going to dimension this as being that inner diameter was given as, let's see, let's look for it over here, drilled to a depth of 14, and I am not seeing my inner diameter specified. Oh, there it is. Diameter of 6 millimeters. Okay, and this is going to be, let's actually just go ahead and constrain that. And of course, that's 6 divided by 2, because we're doing half of it, so 3. And then go ahead and constrain that. Dimension here was that depth for the blind hole of 14. Now what you're going to see is I do have a lot of overlapping closed profiles, so I'm going to have to select a bunch of profiles when I go ahead and do my revolve operations. So my first revolve will be this vertical section. I'll set the axis to be my x-axis, and now I've created that first cylinder. Okay, I'm going to show that sketch again because I'm not done using it. So if I right click, I can repeat revolve or just go ahead and select it again. I need to select all of the parts I'd like to revolve. So I'd like to revolve that profile, and then the axis here would be my x-axis, and by default, since it's going through, my revolve went through an already existing feature, it's showing that as a cut. But I'd actually like to combine them, so I'm going to change the operation to a join operation. And you see by omitting that profile right here, I did get this blind hole. Now we'll go ahead and use the hole tool for the other ones. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat my revolve. And what I'll show you here is if I don't select the right feature, and actually if this fully, let's see, this might not work. So that's given it its own axis, and yeah, it will not work. So let me just show you as a cautionary tale. So we can change this to join. I'm going to hide my origin. And what you see is I got this missing profile. This should extend all the way into the connection of these tubes. So what happened here? Well, I needed to select more of that profile. So if I edit this, right click, you can always edit a feature. And then if I want to select more profiles, now I can just click on the other profiles that I'd like to select. And I might actually hide the body just for now. So, oh, it's not letting me select that. Sometimes if that's the case, if you hold control, it's going to give me the option to select that. I'm going to re-show my body so I can have the operation as join. And then I've got most of this going. So now the only thing I need to do is these two tubes here. And what I'm going to need for that is to create a construction plane. I can't use one of the planes that are in my origin. And the reason being, if we take a look at this top view here, we see that there's a 60-degree angle. And so I'm going to have to set up a plane at an angle. So to do that, you can go to construction, plane at an angle, and I'm going to choose my x-axis or y-axis. And so the angle, and I'm just going to drag it just so I can make sure I'm going to type in the right angles here. Okay, and so what I see here is I can actually do -60. So sometimes it's hard to understand where the origin is going from. Let's type in 0. Okay, and so it's going from the plane that's bound by the xy plane. It's calling that the 0. So if we type in 60, okay, now that gives us our construction plane. And we can go ahead and make our final sketch on this plane. Okay, so now that we've got our construction plane, we can go ahead and make our final sketch on that plane. So I'm going to go ahead and click sketch, and I'll select that construction plane. And what I see now is I've got a goofy origin for this construction plane. So I'm going to just, before I go any further, I'm going to project the actual origin, and I'll project the vertical axis in this plane. And the reason I'm going to do that is I want to make sure I'm constraining back to my original origin, not the origin that the sketch over here has decided to define. Okay, and so now I can continue to sketch away. Now, if I like to look normal at the sketch, I can click on it and then say look at. And then now I can go ahead and make my features that are at the angle. So I'm going to go ahead and look at that sketch. And what I'm going to do is I need to make a horizontal tube, so I can use the rectangle for that, and then a tube at an angle at another 45-degree angle. So clicking on that origin, and then that's dimension of 20. This is dimension of 5, just like we have done before. And then I'm going to use my line tool just in a similar manner that we did before. And I can also type in 20, and that gives me that dimension. Well, dimension between here and here is 45. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my line tool to complete this. And any constraints I didn't pick up, I could quickly add them. Okay, and so that dimension there to there should be 5. So now my sketch is fully constrained, and I can go ahead and do my final 2 revolves. So I'll revolve this feature, escape. So R for, R thinks I'm doing rectangle, so go into my revolve. I've actually made it a hotkey as Shift R, but I added that. So go ahead and make a revolve about this axis. Change our operation back to join like we had done previously. Now I can right click and just repeat that, but I need to unhide that original sketch. I don't need to see that first sketch anymore. And I'll select that as my axis. I need to change the operation back to join. Okay. And so now I'm almost all the way done. I've got my features now of the cylindrical features. What I don't have are these blind holes. Oh, and I see here is by having this feature here at the end of the timeline, what I have is a pretty goofy looking edge here. So one thing I can do is I could actually, probably roll this to the end of the timeline. And no, it's not going to let me do that because it's linked. Oh no, it did. But let me try to roll these forward. Okay, so what I'm actually, by clicking on this, what I'm trying to do here is move this to the end of the timeline. It may not let me. No, it's not going to let me. Okay, and that's okay. What I could do is I could recut everything with this sketch here by another revolve cut. So if you kind of like need to have this, now this wouldn't be best practice, but if you're just in a pinch and you need to get everything to look right, you can do a revolve cut here. And so this should sort of clean up that face. Yeah, it gives me a nice edge there. So I could do that revolve cut feature. But let's go ahead and actually do the other ones really how they should be done, which is a drilling operation. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so to do a drill, what I'd like to do is use the hole tool on this face. So if I click H for the hole tool, I can click on a face, and you might actually think before I do that, can I just click on this point right there? And it actually isn't. If I notice, it's not right on that point. So, but I can drag and snap it onto that point. The distance here was that diameter of 6, or sorry, the drill depth was 14. and then the diameter was a 6 mm diameter hole. Now this profile isn't going to look the same. Now we could change this to a flat profile. Typically this isn't a good way to make a hole with a flat end mill, but we'll just go ahead and use this design as is. So I can change that right there. One thing I could do, just to show you the capabilities, is instead of using a hole on this face, I could just create a mirror of the feature I just made. So a mirror of that whole feature about my XZ plane. So if I select my XZ plane, it would just add it in that bottom face down there. Okay, and then I need to make a hole on this face. And if I look at that face, let's go ahead and look at that face. So I can drag and snap that to that middle point as well. And actually all the parameters have been remembered for me, so that's good. And I can just repeat this operation a couple more times. And go ahead and add it to this face. Now, actually be careful. If you click the point in the sketch there that I had created in my second sketch, and I'm actually glad I did this so I can show you there's a problem. The problem is it's trying to make the hole orthogonal to the sketch that point lives on. So I don't actually want to click that. I want to click the profile of that face, and then I can snap it to that point after the fact. Okay, and then I've got one more hole left to do. Nope, all right. So that's it. We've created our full design. So just a combination of using the Revolve tool and the Hole tool could completely do this model. Hopefully you found this video useful.